Hey everybody, it's Gareth with Wanger Corp. Building off the previous video of creating a show file from scratch, which if you're interested, I'll put the link for that up here. I want to now show you how to write cues. Make sure you're sitting in the cue workspace. That's in the upper right corner. I'm going to make like a pre-show cue, and I'm going to put everything at its 0 position. That's a nice, easy one to start with. So I click and drag the main rag. I'm going to drop it onto playback 1. Playbacks are essentially your go buttons. Go ahead and drag the palette in. So now we've got all of the motors in the cue, and their movements read like a sentence. So main rag flies to 8 foot, 8.5 inches. So if you just read it, you can see what that motor is going to do. We want to get all of these to 0. So click on the first one and target. That's the position where you want it to go. So I'm going to say go to 0. We're going to save those changes, and you can see it updates. You don't have to close this window. So once we're in editing mode, you can kind of just click through and edit as many as you want. And last one. All right. If I want to just run this cue, you hit the load icon for the cue. We can see Q1 is now loaded up onto the playback. If you've got a hardware console, you can press the physical go button at this point. I'm going to do it all on screen so you can see what I'm doing. So press the go button. Everything that's moving turns green, and it starts moving around on stage. As they complete, they turn blue. A common way to write a new cue is to first jog all the motors into the position that you want them to be. So I'm going to go over to the jog screen, and now I will go ahead and close this movement editor to get out of my way. I want to grab the main rag, and I need to fly it out of the way. I'm going to raise it up. I want to spin the turntable, and I'm just going to move it clockwise until it's basically downstage. And then let's take the upstage palette, and we're going to get it basically to center line. All right, so now I've pushed everything around on stage just where I want it. I want to snapshot this as the cue. I'm going to change workspaces back over to cue. From the cues menu, add a new cue. I'm going to call this cue 10. We'll call it Act 1, Scene 1. Save those changes. Great. Okay, that's a very simple way to make a cue. Jog everything into the right position, and then just add the motor into the cue. Spikemark by default will take the current position and use that as the cue target. You can also go one step further and create what we would call spikes. Spikes are like trims or deads in some other systems, but basically it's a way to put a name on a value for a position. And the beauty of that is that you can define the spike in one central location for the motor and then use it in any number of cues. If you edit that definition at any point during your cue writing, every cue that uses the spike position will update to a new value. So as you're tweaking cues around, you don't have to kind of track through the show and make those edits cue by cue by cue. You just edit the definition in one place, and all of your cue sheet will automatically update. Let's go ahead and do that at least for one of these axes to show you how that works. So I've got the main rag selected. It's currently targeted for an explicit position of 25 feet, 4 inches. Let's add a spike to it instead, and we'll just call this low trim. And you can see again by default, what it'll do is bring in the current position as the value of the spike. And now we select that, we'll save the changes, and you can see the target both in the movement editor and then also in the cue movement changes from being an explicit value to the spike value. I'm going to go ahead and quickly add in a few more spikes that we can play with. So far, we've been building everything as simple single-step cues, so that if you press the go button, all motors start at the same time and they all run their movements to completion. Let me show you how to do a multi-step cue. We're going to build it so that the upstage wagon starts heading off stage left first. Then after a slight delay, turntable will start to spin. Then after a slight delay, the main rag will come down. So everything should still be in motion as the main rag is landing. It'll be kind of a more interesting look than just having everything start at the same time. We're going to start with the upstage pallet. So let me drag that over onto the cues. I can just drop it on the bottom of the cue list. That will create a new cue for me. If I select its movement, I can now say, hey, I want to send it over stage left. I've been doing everything in speed so far, but if I flip to the time mode, I can now say, hey, I want this whole thing to take 10 seconds. I can either leave it with the 2-second acceleration and deceleration, or I can make it a sharper start and then maybe a smoother finish. And then I want to save those changes. And now I want to have a slight delay between the next step of the turntable starting. So from my triggers area, I'm going to drag over a stopwatch, which gives me a time delay. We'll give it a 2-second delay. And then after that 2-second delay, I want the turntable to start moving. So let me go ahead and drag the turntable over, and I'm going to have it go another 90 degrees here. I want this to take 8 seconds. Save those changes. Here, let's try a different kind of trigger. Instead of relying on time, I can also make it based on position. So if I select my trigger, I can say, well, when the turntable, which is going to be going from 90 degrees to 180 degrees, let's say when that gets to 110 degrees, I want that to trigger the main rag to come in. And that's going to come to its in spike. So we're going to save those changes. Now we'll go ahead and load this up and run it. Great. So that's some very basic but useful cue programming techniques that you now know to start messing around on your own. Hope that helps. See you on the next one.